We are ready for you to get started. Thank you again, Phil.
Okay, thanks again for having me. And welcome to all of you for taking some time out of your day to hear some ideas that I hope you haven't heard to change your retirement plan for the better. And the key that I basically wanted to, I guess, come up with in putting these ideas together is we all want to have the best retirement plans possible. And really, in a world of unlimited budgets, it's easy to make a phenomenal retirement plan. Just match ungodly amounts of money and you're going to have the best retirement plan out there. But what I want to do is challenge the idea that improving your retirement plan costs a lot of money. And we want to look at ways that we can make things better for your participants and really better align the retirement plan with the goals that you have as an organization. So try to think a little bit outside of the box. A little bit about Strategic Retirement Partners. We're a national firm focusing strictly on retirement assets. So helping your participants achieve a successful retirement with dignity is really our sole guiding purpose. And anything that we can do to help your participants along the path to that is what we really try to focus on. So just to start off with, I just wanted to, I guess, start with a poll. We're going to start with the first concept. I'm sure none of you have ever heard about it: automatic enrollment. So if we can just take a little poll and see how many of you have either automatic enrollment or automatic enrollment paired with auto escalation. And I know this is a new concept for just about everyone on the call, so we'll explain what it's all about soon. Just kidding. As you're answering those questions, just we got a new graphics person at our firm, so bear with me with some of the transitions and the designs. He was having a little fun putting these together. So might have a couple more stragglers coming on, but a little less than half of the plans have automatic escalation, and about half have automatic escalate, or half have both. Let me start over again. Half do not have automatic escalation or automatic increase, and about equal split between the other two in terms of having automatic enrollment without escalation and automatic enrollment and escalation. And it's actually coming down more, where only 15% of the people on the call actually have both automatic enrollment and escalation. So it's really a good place to start in terms of what we want to talk about. Why would we want to do automatic escalation and automatic enrollment? Basically because it works. Over time, automatic escalation really has taken hold. Back in 2008, it was first allowed through the Pension Protection Act of 2008. And right after that, about 40% of plans started adding it or had it. And over time, it dropped immediately right afterwards in 2009 because we had that little hiccup in 2008 with the financial crisis. But from then on, we saw a steady increase in the adoption of automatic enrollment into plans. Now, why are we seeing that? Basically, because it works. Coincident with the implementation of automatic enrollment in plans across America, you can see that participation rates in retirement plans also increased from about 64% on average back in 2007 to over 72% in 2017. But what's very interesting is you'll notice on the right-hand side that really there hasn't been much change in automatic escalation plans and non-automatic escalation plans. In other words, plans without automatic escalation had participation rates of around 57%, and that's now dropped to just a little bit over 50%. So it's dropped over time. Whereas plans with automatic enrollment have seen the participation rate go up from about 78% up to a little over 85, almost 86% in 2017. So regardless of the population, automatic enrollment really adds to people participating in the plan. And just a simple example of a plan that I work with, it's about 3,000 employees, has no match, and is a call center. And the participation rate was about 35 to 40% for years and years and years. We implemented automatic enrollment and along with automatic escalation. And in the first year, the participation rate was about 95%. It's since dropped to about 90%, with the average contribution rate around 5.5%. And again, this is a low wage population and no match to encourage people to participate. So just strictly automatic enrollment and automatic escalation. If you have a plan that does not have a match, or if you have a plan that doesn't have a match, there's really no reason to not have automatic enrollment and automatic escalation, because it's not going to cost anything more for you as a company, and you're helping people overcome their inertia in terms of participating in a retirement plan. Study after study has found that when you ask people, do you want to participate in a retirement plan? Do you want to save for retirement? Overwhelmingly, people want to save for retirement, but they either feel that they can't afford it or want to do it but don't actually get around to doing it. I don't know about you. I never procrastinate, and I'm sure you guys never do either. But some people might put other things in front of actually logging into a website and signing up for a retirement plan. So we want to help people in order to be able to have this contribution. Now, a common complaint or argument that I hear from people is, well, we're going to get people in these plans, and then we're going to hear from them a week or two later. Look, even though we've notified them, we're going to hear, hey, I never wanted to participate in the plan. Why did you take my money? And now we have someone that has some money in the plan that doesn't want to be there. There are rules in place that will allow people that fall into that category, if they notify you within the first 30 days, they can get the money pulled right back out of the plan, essentially unparticipate and not kind of jam up the plan with a small balance that's never going to get additional contributions. So there's procedures in place to allow for people that really want to participate in the plan but haven't gotten around to it to participate without roping in people that really have no business and don't want to be involved in the plan at all. Now, what's the benefit of having all these people? Great, they're in the plan, but the main goal of a retirement plan is to be able to retire. And what we want to do is look at what kind of an income replacement ratio are they going to have. Well, in plans with no automatic features, only about 53% of participants are on track to achieve a retirement replacement ratio of at least 70%. If you automatically enroll people just at 5%, that's going to bump up from 53 to 61. But if you also tie it in with automatic increase up to with that, you're going to see a huge increase in the retirement readiness up to about 74%. So really having these basic features, automatic enrollment, automatic escalation, is going to probably be the most effective thing that you can do on behalf of your participants. And I know you've heard the message before, and so I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it is probably the most cost-effective and beneficial, I guess, innovation that I've seen in the retirement industry in the 25 years that I've been involved with. So I wanted to lay that concept out as kind of the groundwork for some of the ideas that you probably have not heard about when it comes to your retirement plan. An idea that some plans have and more are adopting is a Roth 401k feature. So for the next poll, we just want to see how many plans or how many of you have a plan that has a Roth 401k feature. And what a Roth 401k feature is, basically it allows participants to contribute money on an after-tax basis. So they don't take the tax deduction up front. The money goes in after tax, pays taxes up front. The money grows, and then when the money gets pulled out, it gets pulled out tax-free. So it's basically the same as a Roth IRA. The main difference is that with a Roth 401k, there's no income limit. So some more highly compensated people say, oh, I can't take advantage of a Roth. Well, they can't in an IRA, but there is no income limit on a Roth 401k. So about 70% of the people have a Roth feature on the plan, only about 30% don't. And that's something that has been rising over time. So we're very happy to realize or have people adding a Roth. That's not the concept that I'm going to talk about, just adding a Roth to the 401k. But for plans that have a Roth 401k, and about that, 68% in the survey that we are citing have plans with the Roth feature, 70% of people on this call. So awesome. About 78% of participants have been offered the 401k or have the ability. So out of all those, the bigger plans typically will have a Roth, so more participants have the potential to invest in a Roth 401k. But with that, only about 12% make contributions into a Roth. And that's really troubling because if you think about it, who benefits the most from a Roth? Well, if you pay almost nothing in taxes, the deduction that you get by making pre-tax contributions isn't that large. And so you're not getting that much of a benefit from the tax deduction. You likely would be better off putting money in on an after-tax basis. That way, when that money compounds and grows, you don't have to pay money as it comes out. 77% of people, or 77% of households, pay 15% or lower in federal income taxes. So essentially, more than 3/4 of households would benefit from putting money in on a Roth or an after-tax basis as opposed to pre-tax. And only 12% of participants contribute to a Roth. Now, what if we paired the benefits of automatic enrollment with a Roth and automatically enrolled people in a Roth contribution rather than a traditional 401k contribution? That would benefit more and more people. Now, you can get kind of tricky with it as well because we know for people that are earning, for example, under $35,000, you could set up your plan so people with a salary of under $35,000 would get enrolled with 100% of contributions going into a Roth. People that are between 35 and 90,000 might go half and half, and over 90,000 would be 100% pre-tax. Now, these thresholds would be completely set by the plan sponsor. So if you're a plan sponsor, you could decide how much you want to set those thresholds at, if at all. You could even decide to have everyone enroll into a Roth 401k and then maybe assume that the more sophisticated investors would make a determination, and basically kind of like the old Star Trek concept, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. More people are going to benefit from being automatically enrolled into a Roth than having be automatically enrolled into a pre-tax. And quite honestly, if you aren't optimized in terms of how much goes into Roth versus pre-tax, you're not really getting damaged by having money enrolled into a Roth 401k versus a pre-tax. Whereas one could argue that you are economically disadvantaged by putting money into a pre-tax versus it should be going into a Roth. So you can really benefit a lot more people by utilizing a Roth and automatically enrolling people into a Roth rather than automatically enrolling them into a pre-tax. And clearly, this is something that benefits your participants and doesn't cost a dime to add the Roth to a plan or switch the automatic enrollment into automatically putting people into a Roth 401k. So we can take that concept a little bit further and talk about practicing age discrimination, but in a good way. I know that could be a sensitive concept for people on the call about age discrimination, but we want to use age in a way that can benefit our participants. Now, if you can think about your average participants, and over time, especially if we automatically enroll someone into the retirement plan, and then they've been with us for 5, 6, 7 years, they get automatically enrolled typically at 3%. You increase 1% a year, so they're at 4, 5, 6, 7. So a lot of our participants who have been in the plan for a long time will typically have higher contribution rates. And so this is over time we can see that contribution rates have slowly increased from 2008 in some age brackets, not much in others. The average deferral rate, 7% in 2008, 6.8 in 2017. So hasn't moved that much. And also, as you look at the different age brackets, they kind of stay about the same over time-ish. But as you go up the age brackets, you can see that, that's what I wanted. There we go, and my pointer. You can see that 4% for people under 25. As people get older, they typically will or contribute a little bit more over time. So now what happens when we have someone changing jobs? Someone that's maybe 35, 40 years old that has worked with you or worked somewhere else for a while, and now you hire them. Likely at their previous job, they were contributing around 6-ish%. They move over to your company and you automatically enroll them at what? 3%. So they've taken a step back. Now, that's not to say that they couldn't decide to keep contributing at the level they were before, but as happens with a lot of people that are automatically enrolled in a retirement plan, they don't really pay attention to the plan at all. They don't realize when they're in, they don't realize as the increasing amounts get taken out of their paycheck, and so they don't really have a feel for how much they should be taking out. And now we're essentially forcing them to take a step back, go back from 6 or 7 or 8 back down to 3, and putting them a little bit behind on their contributions. So one of the other modifications that you can do if you have automatic enrollment is put age bands in the automatic enrollment. So maybe you automatically enroll people that are 25 years old, enroll them at 3%. If you're between 25 and 34, 4 or 5%. People that are over 50, maybe you automatically enroll them at 7 or 8%. It seems high, but people that are over the age of 50 will have more capacity to be able to save for retirement than someone that would be 25. And they'll also typically be higher salary, so it will be more impactful for their retirement as well. So rather than disadvantaging people when they change jobs, using age bands in the automatic enrollment is yet another way that you can help participants kind of save the right amount for themselves as we move forward. So the next concept that we want to talk about is cleaning up your plan. Now, there's lots of different areas of a plan that get inefficient over time and can affect the overall expenses of the plan. One of the chief areas that we see a lot of issues is with the number of participants that you have in your plan that are terminated. So for our next poll question, how many of the plan sponsors force out the small balance participants? So participants that have under $5,000. Now, the Department of Labor allows plans. So when you have participants that are terminated and no longer participate or no longer active employees, if they have a balance that is under $5,000, you can send a notice out to them and say, hey, you have under $5,000. If we don't hear back from you, if it's under $1,000, we're going to send you a check. And between $1,000 and $5,000, we're going to roll that money into a qualified retirement plan on your behalf. And so those are the thresholds that most of the plan sponsors will use. About 80% of the plan sponsors on the call have that feature. For the 21% of you that do not automatically force out terminated participants, I highly encourage you to do that. Now, we'll talk about why we want to do that and some benefits, and then a little twist on that now. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of these small balance terminated participants. But, I said that we're allowed to send checks. We roll money in for the $1,000 to $5,000, but under $1,000, typically what has happened is plan sponsors will send checks out to those sub $1,000 participant balances? Well, if you have a plan that's been around for 10, 15 years and you have a lot of sub $1,000 balances that are there for terminated participants, what are the chances that those people still live in the same place that they lived in when they left your company? Now, people that have under $1,000 balances typically are going to be more entry level, lower wage, and more transient in terms of their living establishments, moving apartments, moving out of the city, etc. Well, as a plan sponsor, you have to make sure that those checks are received and cashed, or you get the check back in the mail, and then you have to deposit it back in the plan. And there's a lot of administrative hassle that happens with those small balance checks. So what we've been doing with our plan sponsors is, instead of sending checks for the $0 to $1,000 balances, we have all participants have their balances rolled over to a third-party IRA provider if they don't ask to have it sent somewhere else. So rather than sending checks, we can just get rid of all of those smaller balances and have them held at an outside party. And that will reduce the overall number of participants that you have in your plan. So why do we even care? What's the difference if I have those smaller balances? Well, there's several benefits to cleaning up your plan and getting rid of those small balances. First of all, you can improve the pricing. The key component of, or the key metric that plan providers, record keepers, use in pricing a plan is the average balance per plan. So if you can get rid of a lot of sub $1,500, $100 balances, get rid of a lot of those balances, you're going to overall increase the average participant balance, which will allow you to have better pricing from the record keeper. Remember, higher average balance, lower number of participants allows them to send out less notices, have less stress on all of their systems, and so they can pass some of those savings along to you. In addition, it reduces administrative burden in terms of tracking down a lot of the small balance participants and a lot of issues that sometimes you'll have. Kind of the 80-20 rule, where you see 80% of the work is from 20% of the people, and that 20% typically is going to be your smaller balance participants. And finally, it's also going to reduce your fiduciary liability. As long as those participants are in your plan, you have a responsibility to make sure that they receive all of the notices, all the required notices, and that they are receiving access to education, access to the website, are getting everything that a regular participant or an active participant in the plan gets. And so you can be subject to liability from someone that hasn't worked for your company for 10 or 15 years, as opposed to if once they get moved out of the plan, they're someone else's problem. Now, that's not to say that you want to put them in a really disadvantaged position. The rollover providers or the outside rollover accounts have access to competitively priced investments, cash, so they're not disadvantaged in that way. They just don't become a fiduciary liability to you. So it's really a huge way to, again, improve the efficiency of your plan, improve pricing. So this is something that will save you money, not cost you money, and make the plan healthier overall. So another area that we want to look at is the expense side of the equation. All expenses aren't equal. So we've seen a huge rush to, we want to pay the least amount of money for everything in the plan. We want the cheapest provider. We want the cheapest index funds. We want the cheapest mutual funds overall, and realize that from a Department of Labor and perspective, you as a fiduciary are not required to pay the least amount of money, but to pay a reasonable fee for the services that you are receiving. So you are allowed to pay more for services that you think are better, and that's not restricted to. It's not restricted to record keeping services or advisory services. It's also true in investments. A lot of people will say, well, I have to invest in index funds because since they're the least expensive or cheapest, that keeps me safe from a fiduciary perspective. Well, that's not necessarily true. And in some areas, index funds are a lot more efficient and have really outperformed active management, which costs a little bit more money. In equities or in stocks, only 26% of the funds typically are able to outperform their indexes. But in some areas, like fixed income, you're seeing a lot more ability for managers to outperform the indexes. And it costs a little bit more money, but you can definitely get a lot more performance for that money. Remember, bond funds typically have very low expenses anyway. So a little bit more on the expense side. What we're saying is a fixed income index fund might be somewhere on the order of 6 to 7 basis points. Some of the better actively managed fixed income funds might be 35 or 40 basis points. So as a percentage, wow, it's 5 times as expensive. But at the end of the day, it's only about 20 basis points, 0.2%. And a lot of those managers can generate significantly more than 0.2% return, or well above their costs. As you can see, about 60% of core fixed income managers and about almost 85% of global fixed income managers are outperforming their benchmarks. So it really behooves you to look at the expenses and the potential to outperform the indexes that some of these managers have. Now, another area that I wasn't allowed for compliance purposes to put on here, but that because I wasn't allowed to show the differences. But if you look at just index funds in general, a lot of times once you have an index fund in a plan, you just kind of leave it alone. Index funds do what index funds do. But there has been a huge amount of price compression in the index world, where you may have had just the typical Vanguard Index 500 fund in your plan. And it's been there for years and years and years, and you haven't changed it. It's probably 14 or 15 basis points. Well, there's institutional shares of the Vanguard funds that are down into 2 or 3 basis points. Fidelity has an S&P 500 fund that's at 1 basis point. So there are incredibly inexpensive index funds. And so if you haven't looked at the expenses on your index funds and at least justified why you're using the one that you're using as opposed to one that's less expensive, you could be setting yourself up for liability. Now, just having the discussion is really enough. So, for example, if the discussion in the committee went something along the order of, well, we've had this Vanguard index fund for 10 years, and the expense ratio of 0.05 versus what we might be able to get at 0.01, maybe we could get better performance, maybe not. Who knows, because it's very close. It's only 0.04% difference. And people are very comfortable with the Vanguard name, and we feel that our participants would be more likely to invest knowing the comfort of the Vanguard name as opposed to maybe an unknown provider name, even though it might be less expensive. If it's documented and that is on a good faith basis, the reason why you are paying more money for what you believe will be a better outcome for your participants, as long as that process has been followed, you're fine from a fiduciary perspective. So looking at not shying away from active management where you think it can actually deliver results for your participants, and evaluating the index funds that you're using are two other ways that you can benefit your participants without spending extra company dollars. So saving for a rainy day. This is a subject that's been near and dear to my heart. I've been talking about this for a couple years, and it's really become even more evident and more apparent in the environment that we're in now. I've seen millions of surveys like this. How much money do Americans have for emergency savings? Only 30% of people in this survey had enough to cover more than 6 months of savings. Another one I believe I saw where 70% of people wouldn't be able to cover a $400 bill without hitting their credit cards or borrowing money. So any way you turn, there's a lack of emergency savings in Americans. And now there's no time like the present to look at ways that we can utilize a retirement plan to help our participants and our employees generate some emergency savings as well as retirement savings. So this is a concept that's not all providers can do right now, but it would not surprise me if this is something that will become more and more prevalent, especially coming out of the financial crisis that we're in now. But what we're talking about is automating an in-plan emergency savings. So this is a concept where if we automatically enroll a participant at 6%, we put 3% in as we normally would. So that goes into pre-tax or Roth based on what we talked about before. The other 3% would go into the plan, into what we call an in-plan savings account. So it will be done as an after-tax contribution. So you would need to change your plan document to allow for after-tax contributions into the retirement plan. Then on an annual basis, over time the technology will become better that we'll be able to automate even more and more of this. But right now, what we're doing is on an annual basis, so 12/31 of every year, we look at all the accounts, and if that after-tax bucket is $1,000 or higher, we'll now move all of that 6%, or with the increase now 7% or whatever, into the pre-tax or Roth contributions. But we want to get $1,000 of emergency savings. From a plan sponsor level, again, maybe you set that at $500, maybe you set it at $2,000. But whatever dollar amount, you want to have kind of an emergency savings account embedded within the retirement plan. Now that can be automatically put into the default investment. It can be put into cash if you want. There's different ways that you can set that up. But we would typically recommend to just have it invested the same as you do the rest of the retirement plan. Now, why do we want to use the after-tax bucket? Well, first of all, by automatically enrolling people, we're going to use inertia for our benefit to create that account. After-tax contributions are always available for distribution. There's no penalty on taking out after-tax contributions. So that's a benefit. As you put money into the plan, it's a contribution into the retirement plan, so it's eligible to be matched by the employer. So this is something that would potentially cost an employer more money in terms of more money going into the plan, creating more of a match liability. But we're not talking about changing the match percentage. We're just looking at ways to put more money into the plan. Also, so another benefit for some of our lower income participants is these contributions for lower income couples, and I haven't updated this for the latest numbers, but in 2018, the federal savers tax credit for people earning individually less than $31,000 or for couples earning less than $62,000 got a tax credit for some of those contributions. And then those contributions are eligible to be taken out with no penalty. So you don't have the 10% penalty or the 20% excise tax on withdrawals from a retirement plan. But it's a little bit harder to get at than just a checking account or a savings account. So you can kind of truly segregate it as a emergency savings rather than just a savings. Now, what happens is one penalty that you do pay is you do pay taxes and penalty on the earnings. Now, typically that's not going to be that much money. So, for example, if you take out you have $1,000 in there and it grew by 2%. That would mean that there's $1,020 in there. You would pay 10% penalty and taxes on that $20, not on the full $1,000. So really a minor difference in terms of, or a much lower, penalty for a participant taking out that emergency savings as opposed to the fees that would be subject to for a loan or for a hardship withdrawal. Now, again, these are automatic enrollments. Participants can opt out of that at any time. So they're not handcuffed into doing that, but by automating the ability of a participant to have an emergency savings, you're again really helping benefit the participants get to someplace that they really need to be. And loans really cripple retirement savings. So if we can avoid having people take out loans, once people start taking out loans, 20% of people take a loan, but as soon as they do, most of the or many of those people then will lower contributions or stop contributing to the retirement plan. So anything we can do to avoid participants taking out loans or hardship withdrawals, I think, is something that will really benefit people overall. So the next concept, be flexible with your match. So give your participants the ability to decide what happens with those matching dollars. Student loan debt, as I'm sure have seen even more and more of lately, is a growing problem. And 11.5% of student loans are 90 or more days delinquent in default. $393 is an average payment, and median $222. So what if you could allow your participants to be flexible with the match, where they could decide, hey, I want the matching dollars, and these are dollars that you've essentially already committed to giving to your employees if they use some of their income for essentially a purpose that you deem kind of in their benefit. So if you match, you could have a participant putting all of the match, in this case a 5% match. This is an example with a company that has a 100% match on the first 5%. But employee contributes 100% or 5% into the retirement plan, all of the match goes into the retirement. Maybe you have a different employee that is putting 5% towards student loans every month, and so they can't afford to put money into the retirement plan. You can track it so that, well, if they put 5% towards the loan, we'll match that 5% going to pay down their student loan debt. Or maybe you can set it up that 3% goes to the retirement plan, 2% to the loan, and the same proportion goes for the match. There's several different student loan repayment providers out there. We partner with a company called FlexMatch, where it's a truly flexible benefit. It is not subject to ERISA, so these contributions, if they're made to the student loan, are outside of the auspices of the retirement plan. And so you can really be flexible in setting up how you want to have that benefit. It gets relatively in-depth. It's a great concept with a lot of these student loan forgiveness proposals in the CARES Act and the HEROES Act and things. I don't know if these will be as in demand as we were starting to see towards the middle to end of last year, but it is definitely something that a lot of younger participants are viewing as a critical benefit, where they can get the benefit of matching contributions to something that can really help them from a financial perspective right now, and then allow them to be able to save for retirement down the line. Now, the next concept is look for other ways of getting contributions into the retirement plan. And so there's different sources that you can tap that will also provide additional contributions into the retirement plan. We've worked with a company called EvoShare, where employees can register on the EvoShare website, and then through online shopping or in-person meals or at certain retail locations, they'll earn cash back, and that cash will actually get deposited into their retirement plan. So it's a way to have extra money from, not provided by the company. It's an additional benefit that doesn't cost anything for the company to offer, and then allows money to get contributed into the retirement plan. Now, it's a little bit of a roundabout way of how this company puts the money into the retirement plan, because remember, contributions to the retirement plan have to come out of a paycheck. It has to be payroll deducted. You can't just write a check and put money into a retirement plan. So what happens is as a participant earns the cash back from the various retail locations, what will happen is that EvoShare will put, or in this example, you can see the participant earned $200 in cash back, and that gets put into their checking account. But then also EvoShare directs you as the employer to deduct an additional $200 from the participant's paycheck. So $200 goes into the checking account, $200 comes out of the paycheck into the retirement plan. More contributions into the retirement plan, you get an additional tax deduction because this, if you're doing it in pre-tax, it becomes tax deductible. Or if you're after tax, no tax consequence at all. But you're going to have more cash in the participant's pocket and more money saved. Only $40 there, $240. But what if your participant doesn't want the money to go into the retirement plan? Well, that money can also end up getting contributed into student loan, college fund. An additional benefit that this company also allows is that the credit cards that get registered doesn't have to be just the employees. It can be the employee's spouse, the employee's parents, if their kids have credit cards. Whatever credit card is tied to that EvoShare account earns the rewards that will then get contributed into the location that the participant wants, whether it be the retirement plan, loans, college funds. But really a great benefit that you can offer to your participants without additional cost. And I see a question that popped up. So, that sounds great. It's free. How does EvoShare make money? And so what they do is they negotiate some of the discounts with the different vendors. So Walmart.com, for example, is one. Let's say you earn 3% cash back on contribution or purchases made at Walmart.com. Well, what happens is EvoShare is negotiated where there's going to be 4% cash back. You would get 3%, they get 1%. So the quotes or the amount of cash back that your participants would see that they're earning, that is truly what they get. EvoShare has negotiated extra or some extra compensation for themselves on the side to be a part of the program, and that's how. So they make money by providing access to the participants. But the amounts that are shown on the EvoShare website, how much do you earn back for purchasing at the different retail or online locations, that is truly money that will be earned by your participants. Now, it has the potential to be a little bit of an administrative burden. I do know that they had partnered with ADP, and I know with Paylocity at this point, and they're working with a lot of or they're trying to get other payroll providers to have the integration so that you wouldn't have additional administrative burden to decide or make sure that the money gets pulled out of the paychecks correctly and deposited into the bank accounts, etc. But it's a really cool concept that, again, very low cost or actually no cost from the plan sponsor side. Coordinate your benefit. Last poll for the day. How many of the plan sponsors have a health savings account as part of your benefits package? Oops. So we're seeing more and more companies offer healthcare or HSAs as a way to really lower overall expenses on the benefits side. And for this group, about 80%, so 4 out of 5 of you guys are currently offering HSAs. So you all know that it's a very efficient way to lower costs on the retirement or on the healthcare side. But what we see happen a lot is money just gets, $1,000 or $2,000 in a year gets put into the HSA, and then boom, it gets used to pay for deductibles and healthcare expenses, which is initially the intent. But HSAs are truly the most efficient savings vehicle for retirement out there, because the money that goes into an HSA is pre-tax. So you don't pay taxes on money that goes in. The money can be invested in a variety of vehicles. Typically, it's just invested in a money market account, but you can partner with providers that will allow you to pick a wide variety of mutual funds that you can invest in. Very often, you might even be able to set it up so it would have the same investment lineup that you have in your 401k plan. That money grows tax-free, and then when you take the money out, as long as it's for qualified medical expenses, it can come out tax-free. Now, the secret for HSAs is that when you take the money out for qualified medical expenses, there's no time limit as to when you have to submit for the reimbursement. So, for example, if you leave all your money in the HSA and pay as you go with money outside of the HSA, and after 20 years you have $30,000 or $40,000 in the HSA. Well, if you've saved receipts and bills for medical services over the past 20 years, as long as they add up to the amount that you're pulling out of the HSA, you are reimbursing qualified medical expenses and you will not be subject to paying taxes. So as long as you maintain the documentation, you can truly have the most tax efficient vehicle for retirement. This is a really great concept for a lot of highly compensated employees, especially in companies that have issues with testing issues on the 401k side, where their highly compensated employees can't contribute the max to the retirement plan. There's no limits in term, or there's no restrictions to maximizing contributions into the HSA. So a lot of people don't realize that this money can be invested the same way money in a 401k can be invested, but come out completely tax-free. And so it's an additional bucket of money to save for retirement without having as many of the restrictions that you have on the 401k side. So that was 8 different ideas, but I want to leave all of you with one final bonus idea, and it has to do with plans that use a safe harbor contribution. So plans that have a safe harbor, one of the issues is that when you make a safe harbor contribution, one of the downsides of that is that the money is immediately vested. So it doesn't matter if an employee, whenever an employee is eligible, as soon as that money gets into the account, they're fully vested, and so they can leave and they take that money with them. Well, there's an additional safe harbor method that a lot of people don't know about or haven't used. And so if you already have automatic enrollment, so if you're a safe harbor plan and you're already using automatic enrollment, this is really not much of a change for you. But even if you are just a regular safe harbor, adding this qualified automatic contribution arrangement, QACA, can really be a huge benefit. Now, what the requirements are is that you need to automatically enroll the participants at 3% and escalate them at least for 1% a year until they get to at least 6% and up to a maximum of 10%. Once you do that, there's a different matching strategy or matching requirement for QACA plans than traditional safe harbor. It's 1%, 100% match of the first 1%, and then 50% match on the next 5. So for a participant or for a participant in the plan, if they put 5% in, or 6% in, they would get a 3.5% match. So less than the 4% that you would typically get on a traditional safe harbor. Or if you have a plan that is using what's called a non-elective contribution, or you're just giving 3% to everyone, this plan also qualifies for the QACA. So what's the benefit? As we said, a traditional safe harbor has immediate vesting. Plans with a QACA safe harbor, the QACA, have a 2-year cliff vesting. So you are no longer rewarding short-term employees with being able to keep that safe harbor match. People that will have to stay employed or be employed for 2 years before they can be fully vested. It's 100% cliff vesting. So you get 0, and then once you hit the 2 years, you are fully vested. But as opposed to being immediately vested, that's a huge benefit that we've worked with many of our clients, and it's better for retention, better for morale, and makes the employer feel much better about a safe harbor contribution when they realize that it's going to go to the participants that they want to reward, rather than being, disappearing for the participants that they really don't want to reward and haven't been contributors long term to the company's success. So with that, got through actually 9 ideas that hopefully you haven't heard. So put that extra one in there so that even if you'd heard at least one of them, you still walked away with 8 ideas you hadn't heard. We have a little bit of time left for some questions. So if you want to throw any in there. And we see the first question, if I use automatic enrollment, when should participants be eligible? So if you're going to automatically enroll participants, there's a balance that you want to strike in terms of you don't want to, from an administrative standpoint, make it too short of a time frame. So the easy thing you might say, oh, as soon as someone's hired, I want them to be eligible. Well, there's notice requirements, and it's hard to get someone enrolled in the plan day one of employment. We would typically recommend no earlier than 30 days, and really kind of the optimal or the most common time frame that we see is 90 days, and then the second most common that we see is 1 year. We're seeing that number trend more towards the 90 days than the 1 year. So we've had a lot of plan sponsors that are moving from having 90 or 1 year period for people to be participating, moving into a 90-day. So you have to be in the plan or an employee for 90 days, and then on the next entry date. So sometimes that would be on a monthly entry or a semi-annual entry. So somewhere between 3 and 6 months is the typical time that we're seeing people be eligible for the automatic enrollment. And that gives you time to notify the participants that they will be automatically enrolled so they can opt out and not be in the plan if they don't want to be. Okay, one other question. So talked about a lot of different changes. Can I make the changes now, or do I have to wait until January 1st? So changes to plan provisions can really be made at any time during the year. Now, if you have a safe harbor provision, removing this or making changes to the safe harbor, that's something that can only be done on a January 1st. There's special rules associated with making changes to safe harbor plans, so it can be done, but it's difficult. That typically is on a 1-1 basis, but any of these other changes can be done basically whenever you want, just 30-day notification for most of the stuff to participants. So you would notify them that, for example, people that are going to be automatically enrolled used to do pre-tax, now it's going to be Roth. A lot of these ideas are just going to impact new participants, so it's on a rolling basis going forward. So really, the changes, if you make them immediately, aren't going to be hugely noticeable to the bulk of the participants in the plan. So with that, if I don't see any other questions, I want to turn it back over to Kelly. She'll have some information about how you can get credit for the attending this webinar and the SHRM credit, etc. So Kelly, you still there?
I sure am. Thank you so much, Phil. Excellent presentation. And thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Look out for that email tomorrow. It'll have a link to the recording of this webinar, as well as information regarding SHRM, HRCI, and CPE credit for CPAs. Thanks again, Phil. I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.